5.
Smell good.
What's that?
All set. Good evening and welcome to the Accounts Committee meeting of the Brockton City Council. It is Thursday, July 30th, 2026. I recognize a quorum. To my far right is Ward 4 Councilor Susan Nicastro. To her left is Ward 7 Councilor Shirley Azak. To my immediate right is Councilor at Large Jeff Charnell, and I am Councilor at Large Wynn Farwell, Chair of the committee. Mr. Clerk, would you proceed to the first item on the agenda?
First item on the agenda is the annual municipal financial cycle. Invited Dr. Troy Clarkson, Chief Financial Officer.
Welcome, Dr. Clarkson. Before you begin, I want to read into the record, and I think some of our residents may not know this, but
Thank you. Thanks, Shirley.
each of our subcommittees has 5 members, and coordinating meetings, especially during the summer, is difficult. And it's especially difficult since all of you serve on other committees. For example, Councilor Azak is Chair of Ordinance. So we will be having more meetings. We will coordinate schedules. This isn't an important subcommittee of the City Council. But for those who might wonder, well, why don't you meet more often? It is quite a logistical challenge to try to find nights when people don't have prior commitments and/or are not serving on other committees. So having said that, the floor is yours, Dr. Clarkson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, and good evening, members of the Accounts Committee. I'm happy to be before you to discuss the annual financial cycle, and also to support the presentation that you'll receive momentarily from our city auditor. Before I begin with just a discussion, and I've handed all of you the budget calendar that guided us in the preparation of the budget year that started just a few weeks ago. But before I get into discussing that, I would like to mention something that I mentioned at the last Finance Committee meeting, and I've been working with Councilor Farwell, and I hope that to appear before the Finance Committee next month in August with what I'm calling a State of the City Finances address. We've had so many discussions over the last year about the budget process, the budget itself. There has been in the community, I think, a lot of highly charged rhetoric. And so what I plan to do is to make a very objective presentation about the numbers of fiscal year 26 and how we finished, what we foresee for this current fiscal year, and what we project in moving forward in fiscal year 28 and beyond. That'll include, I think, a detailed discussion on revenues, on expenses, and of course, on how our revenues and expenses impact school spending and what we foresee in terms of that relationship and that interaction, both for this current year, for the year that just ended, and for fiscal year 28, including the discussions we have ongoing with the schools about their role in supporting the project that we did issuing pension obligation debt. So I really look forward to that next month. My team and I, including Juan, will have our first meeting tomorrow to begin to prepare for that. We think it will be a detailed presentation with a lot of information. We'll provide that presentation to you before the meeting so you have a chance to review it and come and have a real detailed discussion. So thank you, Councilor Farwell, for your partnership in helping us put that together. For tonight, I have printed for you this schedule because it follows, this budget calendar follows generally the schedule we follow every year, at least during the 7 or 8 budgets that I've been here in Brockton for. And so the planning for the budget that you see in June actually begins the prior November, when we start putting together guidelines on what we think the fiscal condition of the city will be for that ensuing year. And then we start putting together information for the departments, and in mid-January, share with each department a list of personnel, their year-to-date budgets through that fiscal year, so they understand what their spending has been, and then guidelines on the ensuing year's budget. And over the next several weeks, we meet with, my team and I meet with each department head and review their proposals, whether or not there's any new positions proposed, or if they have anything, any capital needs they're trying to address. And then some of those, usually with this mayor, the process was a little different. With the previous mayor, he was interested in meeting with each and every department. I think this past go-around, the larger departments met, then had a subsequent meeting with the mayor. After all of those meetings, my team and I will put together a final proposed version that we review in detail over a meeting that lasts several hours with the mayor. He makes any final adjustments, and then we put the final balanced budget together to present to the city council. So that process has worked well in the last several years. As you know, we've had several challenges in the last several years, but we've been able to present you a balanced budget. So that is a brief overview, because I really wanted tonight to be a chance to have a dialogue and to have you ask questions about that process, anything that interests you, how we calculate those revenues, how we come up with the budgetary numbers. Really, I'm looking forward to a robust dialogue. So I'll stop there and really open it up to any questions that you have.
Councilors, any questions at this point?
Yeah.
Not yet. Dr. Claxon, just one observation, and then we'll proceed. I don't think the average person realizes the level of detail that we follow when we create the budget, when you evaluate revenues, when we look at expenditures, and of course we have the historical data from what's been spent over the last 2 or 3 fiscal years. So that you're not blindsided, I just want you to know that I've made public statements, and I happen to think that we have fiscal constraints which are going to be very challenging in FY 2028, and I suspect all of us recognize that. How we get to where we want to be in terms of additional reserves, cutting back on spending. For example, I'm one of those, I'd put on a hiring freeze except for school teachers, public safety staff, and other essentials. I'd try to combine some positions so that we don't hire new employees, which automatically trigger health, dental, and pension benefits. But as we go through the dialogue, I do think you'll probably get quite an array of suggestions, and I hope the final product will be that by FY 2028, we're in a stronger, not a perfect, but a stronger position, because I really don't see things getting markedly better absent some infusion of revenue that I don't know the source of that yet. So, and, you know, please respond if you have any remarks, but.
Sure. I think you are absolutely correct. And I think both in speaking to you here in these chambers and across the street when I've spoken to the school committee, I've been very frank about that undeniable fact, and that is that this year was a challenge to balance the budget, but next year in fiscal 2028, we anticipate it being even more of a challenge. And a big part of that reason is we are still recovering from the deficit in 2023. And let me explain why, because I know just that statement will be interpreted by some as being politically charged, but it's not, it's objective. I learned, when I learned from my mentor in this business more than 30 years ago, that in crafting a municipal budget, the best tool you can have is to project your revenues, particularly your local receipts, very conservatively. And in my first several years here, we were able to do that. And that's why we were able to produce free cash anywhere between $15 to $20 million pretty consistently every year. And that's because we enlisted that practice of conservative revenue projections, and then also being very careful about our spending and monitoring our spending very closely. And as all of you know, you've seen our monthly reports, we monitor that, and consistently over the last several years, we've finished each fiscal year generally with a budget surplus of at least $10 million. So that combination of very careful spending and conservative revenue projecting has produced those robust free cash numbers. And you'll see that in the presentation that I make next month. One of the things that we had to do, and perhaps the most challenging thing we had to do in the wake of the school deficit, was in that 1 year, in order to meet the challenge of that deficit. If you remember, we raised those local receipts in 1 year by $10 million. That act alone essentially cut our ability to generate free cash in half. And every year, in order to maintain that spending level, we have kept those projections for local receipts almost at or near our prior year's actuals. So there's very little wiggle room. And as you know, free cash has a 2-year lag because so you finish a year and then you close it out, but by the time your free cash gets certified, you're balancing the following year's budget on that free cash. So we'll see, I suspect that the free cash that we certify this fall for the year that just ended a few weeks ago will be the smallest number that we've seen in a very, very long time. And so that's an ongoing challenge that's going to present a challenge to us in balancing the budget. And that comes at a time when we continue to have significantly rising costs. Now, this is a problem not unique to Brockton, as I'm sure you've seen in the newspapers and in online news sources. Communities throughout the Commonwealth are facing this challenge, and that is rising health insurance costs, rising pension costs, which make what we did in 2021 and then in last fiscal year even more important. Other communities, including the city of Newton, are pursuing pension obligation bond projects that almost identically mirror what we've done. So we've become a leader and an example for others. But those rising pension costs and rising health insurance costs, which in some cases 10, 15, even 20% a year, and then rising tax revenues that can't exceed 2.5%, so those numbers are at odds with one another. And so Brockton, and I think communities throughout the Commonwealth, are reaching a breaking point where revenues simply are not meeting our expenses. We don't, in Brockton, have the luxury of other communities that they've accumulated significant reserves, and they have very robust local receipt revenues where they can have built reserves to weather that storm. We have been able, with the reserves we had on hand, to weather that storm the last few years. But as you know, those reserves have dwindled, and so our general stabilization is down to about $1 million. We do have that pension stabilization fund, but we would prefer not to use that. And every year we use one-time revenues to meet our ongoing expenses. And this isn't anything new. I've said this for years. That is not a sustainable practice. But Brockton has typically not been in a position prior to my arrival 7.5 years ago for many, many years to use only recurring revenues to balance the budget. And it's just the challenge, I think, of how the city is structured financially and what we need to do to meet the needs of our residents versus the revenues that we have available to do that. So I'm really happy to have this opportunity at this meeting to sort of set the stage for a much more detailed and robust discussion next month.
Well, finally, I know you're in department heads meetings, and please pass on to the mayor, I hope he'll emphasize to our department heads that watch your finances week to week and month to month, because if they do run into a deficit, it really puts us in a very difficult position 6 or 7 months into the fiscal year to try to address that, because you only have a small window of opportunity to adjust spending and try to offset whatever is happening. And the other thing that I would say to our department heads, and we have some new ones who are not familiar with municipal finance, don't feel you have to spend everything that was appropriated for you out of fear that you will then suffer a reduction in the year ahead. To the extent that they can conserve what has been appropriated, it does become free cash, or at the end of the year, they have greater flexibility to do some of the things that are needed. And I don't want people to think that if they run a very lean operation, that somehow we will penalize them for it. I wouldn't want to see that happen. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next item.
So in terms of reporting and reconciliation, so after the city council passes its budget, our office starts the reconciliation to file to the Department of Revenue. So right now, what we're doing is reconciling accounts, making sure that cash matches what the treasurer has, matches the general ledger. We're doing journal entries for health insurance trust fund. We're doing journal entries for trust funds in general, indirect costs for grants, all of that stuff to make sure that the city is in good financial standing when we report everything to the DOR. Because ultimately what it comes down to is the more revenues we can bring in or recognize, in this example, in fiscal 26, the more free cash that the city will have, which then would benefit Troy's team being able to balance next year's budget. The reconciliations, they take time. They're not, it's not easy. It's been infamously, months and months and months. Well, in my presentation later on, I will discuss how we're trying to streamline that and use AI and among other modules as well to simplify that and make it quicker for reporting. Usually the free cash figure doesn't come out until around late November, December is when we really know what's going on. And obviously in these financial conditions, it's gonna be more difficult to gauge where we're at because of, we're still trying to figure stuff out with encumbrances. People are still bringing in bills for fiscal 26. So you really can't get a sense of anything, and this just takes a while to do. Obviously my office is also in charge of signing off on the end of year report for the schools. So we need to make sure that that ties out to what it needs to make sure that there are no more, this whole adjustments every single year type deal. And then in terms of the tax recap, for the tax rate recap and the associate sign-offs, is usually who signs off on them is the assessor, myself, the clerk when it comes to the council orders, and it is, and I'll provide the form to you guys later, but there's a lot of forms that we have to fill out for enterprise funds, for how much the free cash is, all of the votes that you guys take in terms of transfers, internal transfers for enterprise and general fund, all of that has to go into the tax recap, and ultimately that determines what the levy will be. It's a very involved process. And in terms of outstanding fiscal 26 obligations for school transportation and CARES Act, I know that the CARES Act, we have 3.7 outstanding. As you guys know, I think we provided that to you before, that it's all school expenditures are in there. Troy, do you have a sense of the school's transportation shortfall?
So the mayor has set up at least monthly meetings between the superintendent and me and him so that we can discuss issues like that. I know in the past several years, the school department has had available the use of circuit breaker and other reserve funds that they've used to address the shortfall in the school transportation costs, which of course are a non-net expense, which is the responsibility of the city. The current administration, the superintendent, along with their director of operations, Ken Thompson, have taken significant steps, I think, to reduce the transportation costs, so that's good news. We won't see the impact of those for the year that just ended. So I think an exact figure is dependent on whether or not they elect to use some of those circuit breaker funds to address that. So I have not received from the schools a definitive number. It could be as low as around 2 million, as high as 4 million. Further complicating that, I think, is the lingering issue, and probably the most critical single financial issue involved in these discussions is to what degree should the schools be responsible for their share of the principal and interest for the pension obligation debt. I think the irony to that discussion is, first of all, had we not issued the pension debt, our pension costs, both for the school and the city, for FY28 would be somewhere between $10 and $20 million more than they are. That alone, I think, demonstrates the efficacy and the importance of that project that we all did together. But if we hadn't done it, it would be a simple calculation. We'd go through the list and say, okay, Juan is a school employee, then the schools pay his pension costs, and Jeff is a city employee, and so the city pays their cost. Because we replaced the straight pension cost with the pension obligation debt, it's less clear as to exactly how we allocate those funds. But I think we've developed a method that's pretty reliable. At first, we looked at just the numbers of people that were benefiting from the pensions, and that number was about 60-40, 60% school, 40% city. But when we looked into that further, and then when I say we, in this instance, it's the city and the schools working together, although the numbers of people receiving pensions was greater on the schools, generally their pensions were much lower. So the actual dollars that were paid to pensioners really was skewed toward the city because, remember, the teachers are not part of this equation. They have their own pensions through what's called the Massachusetts Teachers Retirement System, and that's a full cost of the schools. So the people who for whom the schools are responsible that are getting pensions, some of them are higher paid people, but generally their wage earning is lower than city counterparts. So when we looked at the actual dollars that were going, it was pretty even, about 50-50, 49% schools and 51% city. We think that's a fair and accurate calculation. In our discussions, other potential scenarios have been produced, and including one that looks at overall spending in the city and to what percent is city in the schools. I happen to think, I don't think that's an accurate bellwether because it looks at all spending for everything, not just pensions. And of course, the city spending is much larger than the schools in that regard. So right now, I actually sent an email to the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education last week asking for a meeting to really come to some resolution on this. Jay Sullivan from DESE did reply, and he has suggested to the schools that they hire an actuary to look at the figures that we've provided on what the pension costs are. I think the numbers are very objective and they are what they are, but should they choose to do that, I also requested that the city be a part of the setting of the scope of work of that so that we have some consistency and agreement on what questions we're asking. The resolution that we reach on that is critical because, as you know, this goes back to fiscal year 24, where according to DESE, we didn't meet the net school spending. As we know, in that year, the schools were unable to spend the budget that was appropriated to them by you. And at the beginning of that next fiscal year, Juan and his team actually made that money available. So it actually was available. But in the eyes of DESI and their rules, they didn't spend that money. And they call that a deficit. And so it, in the eyes of DESI, we didn't meet the net school spending. We're still trying to work through that because obviously that is not a logical conclusion when the city council allocated a number that was not fully spent by the schools. It was then carried over so that the money was available to them. So there's like 3 or 4 years of spending really in this sort of limbo, awaiting for some guidance or a decision on how to allocate those pension costs. And it's not an insignificant amount. The difference between that 49% I mentioned and a number that's somewhere in the 30s over that span is in the tens of millions of dollars. So looking forward to FY 2028, how we allocate that will be critical in developing a budget for fiscal year 2028. In addition, the Student Opportunity Act is expiring, and that may or may not have an impact. I can't predict what the legislature will do. And when we determine what the enrollment figures are for the schools this fall in October, that too will be the foundation of the budget for the next year. So there's lots of unknowns, but I do expect that over the next several months, we've got a tremendous amount of work to do to come to some consensus. I have asked the Department of Revenue to weigh in, and we'll keep them informed in the discussions. I do also, in all of these discussions that I'm sharing with you are discussions I've had with the mayor, and I'm comfortable that I'm representing not only my thoughts on this, but his as well. We'll ask the Secretary of Administration and Finance to weigh in because this is the single most critical issue facing the city in terms of our finances and our ability to continue to sustain our municipal operations moving forward.
Councilor Jarnell, pardon me.
So in regards to the years that are in question in the wake of, how much money did the schools not spend in that year that are now in question to, and what is the true, what is the true remedy to it at this point?
I'll give you the overarching views, but I know Juan has the exact figures. It was $7 million and then $7 million, right? And some of that money the school committee has, and once we return the money after that ensuing July 1st, the school committee could spend it as they saw fit. And so they have allocated some of it. And that's why, again, I'll defer to Juan, give you those exact figures. And if you don't have them right in front of you, we can provide them tomorrow. But that is, and I believe that there was a potential as of June 30th, although those books aren't fully closed, at least the figures that we had, there was another potential amount as of last June 30th that was unspent as well. Is that correct?
Yes.
So overall, close to $20 million over the last 3 years.
So, and what is a perfect world look like, the remedy, and what is kind of can be something that's more challenging?
A perfect world?
Yeah.
Well, in a perfect world, we'd have lots of buildings all around us producing tons of revenue and we wouldn't have any worries.
No, but in regards to the solution to the school spending.
So on a more realistic note, I think that perfect world would be, I think, having DESI realize that, and let me be clear, that there are lots of factors at work there. I'm not being critical of the schools for not spending up to their budget. As we know, that was post-deficit. We worked with the prior superintendent, Dr. Cobbs, to institute a hiring freeze to make sure they didn't have another deficit. And so when Dr. Tahiliani came on board, there was some things in place that, that led to them not spending up to their budgets. So I'm speaking to the reality of the numbers, and I'm not being critical of their operations. But I think in a perfect world, DESE would recognize that if this is the big we, if the council and the mayor, at the request of the CFO, allocate a certain amount to the schools and they don't spend that, that we don't get penalized for that number that they didn't spend. And compounding that is, I believe, that the actual net school spending number is higher than what has been in the end of the year reports because of this issue of the pension obligation debt. And while we're on that, I just want to dispel a widely shared but very inaccurate notion that somehow it was a recent revelation that we could claim credit for the principal and interest on the pension debt. We had a meeting with DESE, and I remember it very well because I was in my friend's backyard in Connecticut on vacation taking this meeting 2 summers ago, where we were discussing, or I was discussing lobbying for taking full credit for the principal and interest on the pension debt. And at the time, because we could set the tax rate and balance the budget, the mayor at the time elected to not pursue that, and so we didn't. But I have been steadfast and adamant about the fact that this is an appropriate deduction from net school spending for these expenses. And so in a perfect world, DESE would recognize that an allocation, a budget set by the city council is an appropriate exercise for determining net school spending, and that we shouldn't be penalized and have to essentially be double counted for that money. And we would have a proper allocation of those pension costs, somewhere around 50% for the cities, 50% for the schools, that would dramatically change the end of year reports for the last couple of years, and I think more appropriately and accurately reflect what those costs are.
Anyone else?
Yes.
Councilor Nicastro.
Good evening. Thank you for being here, Mr. Clarkson and Juan. So 3.7 million outstanding CARES money overspent. Anywhere from 2 to 4 million FY26 transportation. So potentially it could be $8 million. It's from last fiscal year. What are we going to do?
Well, so the free cash calculation that Juan referenced, should we not get relief from the Department of Revenue and or the Brockton Public Schools on that outstanding CARES deficit, if we're essentially forced by the DOR to pay that, that would come out of our free cash calculation for next year. The same goes for the transportation deficit. So in that tax recap sheet that Juan talks about, when that's calculated in the fall, that takes into account all of our existing deficits. And so if those existed at that time, then that would go into our calculation of the free cash that was available for the next year. I do want to say, because this CARES deficit has existed for several years, and I should note the Department of Revenue has been extraordinarily cooperative. They've been great helps to us, with Juan coming on board as a new auditor and sort of learning the ropes. They've been very gracious and helpful. So we've known about that CARES deficit for some time. We've provided the DOR. I believe we've provided you. We've certainly provided the schools with detailed information from Munis that clearly demonstrates that all of those expenses were expenses of the schools and not the city. So that's why we believe quite firmly that those expenses that were incurred during the pandemic and that the schools believed there would be some funding source available to them to cover those expenses. Ultimately, there was not. are legitimately expenses of the schools. But should the Commonwealth decide that we need to cover them, then we'll have no choice but to do that.
We've covered all their other deficits, so how could we not?
Indeed, we have, right? 'Cause
Are we pitching to not have to cover that?
yes, I think both of us independently, and I think together have had conversations with the Commonwealth. And again, that's part, I don't want to, certainly don't want to speak for them, but I think part of the reason why they've allowed that deficit to roll from year to year is because of the unanswered question ultimately about who's going to pay.
But isn't it federal funding?
Well, no, I mean, the CARES was federal funding, and ARPA was federal funding, but the expenses belong to the city, and so that's the issue, is that the expenses exceeded the federal funding available.
We overspent, yes, yes. So I guess the question is, where does that money come from?
And that's the big question, and so if we are, as I just mentioned a minute ago, if we're made responsible, then it will come from the city's, at this point, scant resources.
Great. That's a problem.
Indeed.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Anyone else? Just a couple of questions, Dr. Claxon. I think the figure for non-net school spending for transportation that has been proffered by the school department was around 4.6 million. I'm not going to quibble over $600,000, but it adds up quickly. That's the challenges add up quickly. Two things come to mind. The legislature passed the law which now provides for funding to the schools, net school spending, non-net school spending. The danger in passing a law is that one size doesn't necessarily fit all. It obviously isn't working here in Brockton the way it should, either because we can't recruit all of the staff that we need, so you have unexpended, unencumbered funds that carry over from year to year. If the school committee literally can't spend all of that money and they end up with $7 million at the end of one year and $7 million at the end of the next, wouldn't it be time to get together with our legislative delegation and say, let's have a retained revenue account for the schools. And if they can't spend it in a given year, it would go into that retained revenue account, and then it could be expended by the mayor and the city council upon request by the school committee to cover legitimate school expenses. But I think to have us in this quagmire every year of, well, they couldn't spend it, they legitimately tried, every effort was made, but they ended up with $7 million less spending than was required by the law. So maybe the law needs to be changed. Any ideas?
Sure, that's essentially what we did. And when the schools underspent that, after that next July 1st, and the numbers were certified and finalized, we then made those funds available to the schools. And I think that portion of the transaction was without conflict or disagreement. The challenge came when DESE got involved and didn't, I believe, properly recognize that, the fact that that money was then made available to meet that number. And they looked at, and correct me at any time and jump in if I say anything, Juan, that you disagree with. But the fact that that money was made available didn't count towards that school spending number. And so in the eyes of the Commonwealth, we were underfunding. And the compounding problem there is if that continues, if it happens in one year, you get a letter from DESE and says you didn't meet net school spending, you need to do that. But if we continue to do that, then the Department of Revenue gets involved and they begin to penalize us for the amount that we're not spending. And so that's the real challenge and problem for us down the road, is in those years where the schools did not spend the full allocation that they were provided, we provided that money right back, but still are sort of under the watchful eye of DESE and the DOR saying, if you don't meet net school spending, we're going to penalize you. When our position was, well, we met all our obligations. And I don't want to further complicate the matter, but that doesn't even include what we feel was not the full calculation of credit for pension costs that would make those numbers even more significant in the city's favor.
So for the public at home that doesn't follow this the way we do, we give them the money, but unfortunately, they couldn't spend all of it. So DESI takes the position, if you didn't spend it, we did not meet our requirements for net school spending. Is that a fair assessment?
That's exactly, let's say that the budget appropriated by the city council was $100, and they spent 80. And then after July 1st, we gave them the $20 back so that they had 100 available, which was the original budget. But the Commonwealth said, well, they only spent the 80, and so the city is not meeting its obligations. It's a confusing process, I think, even for folks that do the work every day. And so that's what we're asking, that we allow the recognition of the full payment. But again, that actual number, we need to go back. Now that DESI has agreed that we can take credit for the pension costs, we need to go back and recalculate those numbers for the last couple of years to get a true picture of whether or not the city met its obligations. And I am very, very confident that we did.
All right, well, we have other agenda items, but one thing on pension obligations, because I want to make sure we get this right. I don't want the schools to pay more than they should, but I also want them to pay their fair share. So every month, pick a year, let's say 2010, every year, the Brockton Retirement Board, for those employees who work for the school department and are covered by our local retirement board, they get a check. We should be able to calculate what we have paid to those individuals who worked for the schools and who have received pension benefits. So I'm missing something as to why it's so hard to come up with that aggregate number that over a certain period of time, for school employees, we've paid out X number of tens of millions of dollars, and this is the school share, versus the tens of millions of dollars that we've paid for those employees who did not work for the school department. Am I oversimplifying, or is there a reason that it isn't that simple to take a look at who received what, in what amount, and who owes it?
You're not oversimplifying at all, Counselor. In fact, I agree with you that is the simplest and most straightforward calculation, and that represents that. And it changes from year to year because new people come on and people pass away. Yep. But that 49% number is based on that calculation that you described. I think that DESI and the schools believe that the number perhaps should be something different based on a different calculation as to maybe the school's percentage of funding based on overall spending in the city, or whatever we determine is the formula to calculate the Schedule 19, and that should be the number. And we don't agree that those calculations are either appropriate or based in anything empirical, but those are the discussions we're having right now.
But it shouldn't be a formula. The money has been allocated to those pensioners.
I agree.
We know the amount. We know the period of time. So it just would seem to me we don't need some algorithm to tweak that figure. We should be able to give the school department a legitimate, bona fide amount that has been paid out, and then that would be what they would owe for their employee group, not with anything to do with our employee group on the straight municipal side. But at any rate, this is a discussion that I hope the Accounts Committee will hold again in another couple of months. And I think it's very worthwhile to do this. Let's go on to item number 3, overview of the Office of the City Auditor, first year retrospectives.
So, I made this presentation, I'm just gonna run quickly through it, just to let people know basically what, my office has done. In my first year here as a city auditor, I feel like I get a ton of questions as to what my office really does. I think that there's a lot of misconceptions as to what we're supposed to do versus what we actually do. So, in terms of the mandate and scope, obviously your government authority, we have the Brockton City Ordinance, so obviously the city charter under Plan B, form of government. We also have Chapter 324 that governs us. And also we have in our department, the Assistant Auditor for School Finance, which is established by the city ordinance in lieu of the school deficit. Our core responsibilities are examine all accounts, books, and records reflecting financial activity. We also conduct we're trying to conduct financial and performance audits of the city in Brockton Public Schools. We've actually done a performance audit. Evaluate the city system's internal controls and improvements, and confirm that transactions comply with the state laws. In terms of professional standards, government auditing standards, we follow something called the Yellow Book. It sets how government audits are planned, performed, and reported, including its requirements for our independence. Generally accepted accounting principles. Obviously, that's the fundamentals for accounting that we follow. We also follow Uniform Municipal Accounting System, which is the accounting system that's set up for Massachusetts and the system that DOR actually uses to calculate our free cash reserves and such at the end of at the end of the year. We also have GASB pronouncements. Usually those involve stuff like OPEB, pension costs and such that we have to follow. Massachusetts general laws, and our external auditor, CLA, they perform annual audits to gauge our financial health, and we also do something called single audits, which are any time that a municipality spends $750,000 or more of federal funds, we are required to basically have an audit of those grant funds to make sure that you have the appropriate internal controls and such. Staffing and scope of services. My department has 8 positions. We have 2 vacant positions right now, but we have our quality and technical control administrator starting in August 3rd, which is Monday. Our scope of services, again, performance and financial audits for both the city and the schools. We have to do grant compliance. We also set up accounts for the city, and we monitor them as well. With the new position that you guys put in for the assistant auditor for school finance, we have school finance coordination and oversight. When Aminata was here, she performed a lot of that work with the schools, and that has been extremely helpful to figure out exactly what the schools have been doing. We have obviously our accounts payable division, so we process and invoices, and we do vendor warrant reviews. We also report to the DOR, which then means that we also do our balance sheet, tax recap, and our Schedule A's, so all financial reporting, and we also do internal control evaluations. For what we processed or what has gone through my office in the last fiscal year, and this is still tentative numbers because, as Troy mentioned, we're not really fully closed yet. There's still a lot of reconciliations happening, but preliminary numbers, obviously, our budget between general fund and enterprise funds was $618.7 million. We had so far grant expenditures almost $33 million. In capital expenditures, we've seen 34.4. We've processed over 23,000 purchase orders, which is, I think, higher than in prior fiscal years. Obviously, my office processes the tax forms as well, so we processed over 4,800 W-2s, and we've also paid over 3,500 vendors. For first-year deliverables, what have we accomplished? For audit and compliance milestones, we've, as I mentioned before, conducted the city's first internal departmental audit. It surely was a learning experience for sure, and it was definitely helpful for that department to fix their internal controls. Also, at my time here, we've had that turnover from my predecessor at the end of fiscal 25, but in fiscal at the end of fiscal 24, then in fiscal 25, we met every deadline for the balance sheet submission and the tax recap. For analysis and reporting tools, I'm building right now, as I mentioned to you, I think in a prior meeting, a fund balance calculator that projects current and year-end surplus and deficits by account, which will make it easier to determine what our free cash number will be, have a better estimate, so we can give that figure sooner to Dr. Clarkson's team. And as you know, in recent weeks and months, I revamped the vendor warrant packets for you guys, so it's easier to read and not the mess that you guys had before. Departmental modernization, we've outdated auditing department policies, several of which predated current systems. Open automation conversations with IT, with Chief Information Officer Jorge Vega, and obviously with Troy's team as well, mainly to streamline processes and cut down on paper and postage costs. As you guys know, we've overspent postage costs by a lot, and then we've recently worked with the mayor's office for postage and stuff, and we've realized that postage costs now are 82 cents per stamp. It's a lot of money. And at the end of fiscal '26, we transferred the payroll division to the treasurer's and collector's office. So now Marty Brophy is in charge of the payrolls office. When it comes to school department oversight, this is mainly the work that Amanada had done. We fixed a lot of their purchasing issues. I think you guys had a lot of issues in terms of how they were paying their bills. We've had issues as well with a lot of duplicate payments. They didn't know how to do drawdowns on blanket POs and such. So the purchase order review, requisitions and purchase orders are reviewed before approval, and drawdowns checked against available funds. Rejected orders are tracked to show where training is needed. Amanada had set up a spreadsheet where now my staff, every single time, not just for schools, but for city side, if there's a rejected PO, they have to put it on a spreadsheet, and they have to know as to why it was rejected. So we basically built this mainly for the schools to figure out where they need training. I know that they have a lot of turnover in their staff, especially in their accounts payable staff across the street. And it's been extremely helpful to figure out their weak points in terms of processing or, their purchase orders, or how to do drawdowns, or making sure that they track stuff so they don't have duplicate invoices and such. Vendor and contract compliance. Vendor records are checked for completeness and procurement documents against state law. Payment timing is watched so services are not interrupted. Reporting and analysis. Open purchase order reports are shared as an update. I know that Kim Tsai and her team provide open PO reports to their, I believe, their accounts subcommittee, so they see exactly what, so rather the school committee members see exactly what the schools are paying for, especially when it comes to the Amazon purchase orders, because that's, you can purchase a plethora of things from that vendor. And as I mentioned before, training for departments. With that spreadsheet, my accounts payable staff has gone across the street to the schools multiple times throughout the year to teach the staff how to do, for example, drawdowns on a blanket PO for, certain contracts and such. Disruptions in continuity. Some of the challenges that we've had here were obviously our leadership transition. My predecessor had left in an unopportune time. The city position was turned over at the close of fiscal '25. Third change in the seat across fiscal '24, '25, and '26. And our auditor was appointed, I was appointed within the department. Fiscal '25 close was completed with all Department of Revenue filings submitted on time. In January, we had a Munis issue where our servers crashed, and we were forced to go on the cloud. And this was also in the middle of tax season. But with all that being said, we recovered all the data and all of the tax forms, and everyone got their stuff on time. In federal overtime reporting of requirements, this one was a doozy, because the new law that the White House passed changed the way that overtime is calculated. And we've had, especially in public safety, didn't know exactly why they had different numbers on their W-2 compared to what they made in their pay stub. So we had to go through the process, send memos out, explain to them. Also, Munis at the time didn't have a completely accurate representation of what that overtime is, so we had to basically manually go in the system and calculate that overtime based off the new law. But even with that being said, everything was accurate.
Can I stop you right there? And just add something. One of the confusions with that new law, and what the auditor is referencing, was part of the big, beautiful bill with the no tax on overtime. But and again, check me if I'm saying something, Juan, that's inaccurate, but the way the law was written and implemented, the no tax on overtime commenced after an employee had worked 40 hours. But some of our employees, the work week is 35 hours. So they were eligible for overtime and paid overtime after 35 hours, but the no tax part of it didn't kick in until after 40 hours, right? And so that was the nuance and the confusion in the implementation of this. So I think it was unclear from the federal government as to what the rules were. And so Juan and his team had to be fairly nimble on their feet and react to that dynamic.
It also didn't help that they made it retroactive, so I think the bill had passed in July, but they basically made it to where overtime starting at the beginning of the year in January. So we had to go all the way back and physically input everything into the system and make sure that everything is calculated properly, because obviously we don't want to give wrongful numbers, especially when you're filing to the IRS. For this year's goals, excuse me, I want to automate the audit function. We've had a hell of a time with trying to get data from Munis, trying to get data from different departments, trying to set some stuff up for CLA, with whether it's fixed assets, whether it's OPEB and such. We are now using AI a lot more to cut down on that time, and at the same time, we also want to, moving forward, move time and attendance onto an automated system instead of the infamous yellow sheets that we currently have. Put city spending online. We currently have now an open checkbook from Open Architects, so we will put that in the auditor's website, as soon as possible to make sure that people can actually see what we're spending our money on. Strengthen grant monitoring. This I've mentioned, I think, a plethora of times as well in prior meetings, where we don't do very well in terms of tracking stuff on Munis. So there was a grant module I think I mentioned a couple meetings ago. We want to use that to its full potential. You can put budgets in there, you can print out invoices, you can do, a lot of stuff from that. We really want to automate the system, especially the grant tracking system. It just makes it easier as well for to calculate the grant admin costs that we always budget for. Set an annual audit plan. I do want to set a schedule in picking certain departments to audit, if you will. I know that the last year was more haphazard, where, it was more of, do I have time to do it type deal. This time I kind of want to see if there's a department that needs help or has an issue, we go in, we want to audit them and then provide them with feedback and make sure that they get back on their feet, if you will. Expand the auditor's webpage. This is, alongside the open checkbook. I want to start posting as well the findings of these internal audits. And also, for whatever reason, we don't post the single audits as well on the website, so I kind of want to do that. And paperless bill processing. We want to move purchase orders instead of being in paper. We want to move them electronic to obviously cut paper and postage costs. Accountability and transparency. The things that I always say: report the full picture, bring both progress and problems to the committee and the public, not just the good news. Present numbers plainly. It's pretty self-explanatory, so people can draw their own conclusions. Obviously, use the official figures from the DOR, because there's that confusion, Troy, with the Health Insurance Trust Fund last year, where Massachusetts is not considered to be a quote-unquote gap state, so they can basically decide as to how to, basically account for certain things in accounting. They do it differently than Clifton Larson Allen does. So we have to use, unfortunately, sometimes the numbers from the DOR and keep records open, make records available to the public while withholding the few details that could be misused. As you guys know, when I print out the vendor warrants, they usually don't have the check numbers on them.
One more thing, since Juan mentioned health insurance, we last year raised our health insurance rates for our employees by 14%. And for this last July 1st, it was another 7%. But as we've discussed with you at these meetings before, that was another rising cost. The city spent in the last fiscal year over $6 million just on GLP-1s. But I'm happy to report that our preliminary numbers for the fiscal year that just ended in July, that our revenue was approximately $5 million ahead of claims. And so we've, I think, successfully righted that ship. We have to continue to watch the numbers very closely. We no longer cover GLP-1s for optional use if they are prescribed by our doctor for for diabetes or some other medical purpose, and they are still covered. But we do anticipate that that positive trend for our self-funded health insurance program will continue. And that was an issue, as you know, last year, where actually we had sufficient collections, but from an accounting perspective, the state wanted to see more cash on hand.
Yeah. In terms of how we're accountable, we have obviously our external auditors that come in every single year to audit our financials. So we don't just report to the DOR, we also report our financials to CLA. Accounts committee, this committee, you guys review the office's work monthly, and you guys obviously can request stuff at any time as you have in the past. Professional standards, all work flows to the government auditing standards of the Yellow Book, and obviously Massachusetts general laws that we follow. And public engagement and involvement, public scrutiny, it's in itself a check on this office. Meetings and records are open, and residents can raise questions directly. How to stay informed, obviously to make good use, because we have to keep our, every Wednesday, the city auditor's office open. So in public meetings, obviously people can come in. This is a public meeting, people can come in here. Agendas are posted 48 hours in advance, and all meetings open to attend. My office hours now are every Wednesday from 5 to 7 o'clock at City Hall. There's no appointment needed. And you can also contact us directly at the auditors at brockton.gov. And I'll take any questions.
Councilors? Councilor Razak.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good evening, gentlemen. First of all, I don't have a question, but a comment. I'm very excited when I saw in your presentation, Mr. Auditor, about auditing the departments. I think it should be seen as something positive by them instead of negative. I think if you do that on a regular basis, I think it would help keeping us moving forward in a positive manner. So I was very happy to see that. I just wanted to let you know. I know I've been asking for it for years, and I'm happy to see that you're doing, I loved your presentation. I think it was very well done, and I'm very hopeful, and I think we're moving in a good direction. And I know Mr. CFO also mentioned something similar, that, you will be auditing departments regularly, which I think we should be doing all along, because if they need help, or if we, they need help, and we see something that, instead of waiting until the last minute and then we're in a deep hole and it's harder to get out of. So if we can, it'll help keep us on a good track. So I was happy to see that in both of your, talks and presentations. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Anyone else? Two comments to the auditor and actually the CFO. My intel tells me that the number of people who come into City Hall on a Wednesday evening, and I think it's a great idea to have it open, but we do incur additional costs. maybe you could mention to the mayor, we ought to try maybe every other Wednesday, the second and fourth Wednesday of the month, because I have some people tell me that in their office, no one ever comes in. And I think to the extent that we can reduce costs, I think you heard me earlier, we need to do that. I am not one to advocate for new positions now, but I will tell you that in the finance office and in the auditor's office, I think there is a need for additional levels of staffing. Dr. Clarkson, if you got sick or for any other reason left, I think there should be an associate chief financial officer training under you and learning everything that needs to be learned about finances, budgeting, protecting taxpayers' dollars. And I think a good, healthy review of the auditor's office and how do we align the staff with what we operationally hope that they accomplish would be very beneficial. And I'm not suggesting it be done now because I'm more concerned with long-range finances, but those two offices protect the interests of people directly, their tax dollars, how the departments are funded, the availability of funding, and to the extent that your two offices and staff do what they're supposed to do, it really does contribute to the quality of life in the community. So, and no, you didn't get me to say this. I don't expect any comments, but we've got to have our financial house in order, period, end of discussion. So with that, we can move on. I'm sorry, Councilor Isaac.
Quick question, actually, that came to mind when Mr. CFO was speaking about the rising costs of health insurance. And I remembered years ago when we were, when I first got onto the council, and we were, I don't remember many years when we were flourishing in funds, but I remember speaking with, at the time, State Representative Claire Cronin, and I was trying to figure out, what we could do with our state delegation to help bring in more funds to the city. And she said something to me, and I didn't understand it, and maybe I still don't in a way, but she's like, if the city just came on to the state insurance, that would make such a huge difference. So has that been viewed? I mean, I don't really know how that even works, but I remember at the time that it was Mayor Carpenter, and I don't know if he thought of it or planned on it, but it didn't happen. So can you just tell me a little bit about that?
The state agency that provides insurance to state employees and to some municipal employees who elect to join up with them is called the Group Insurance Commission, better known as the GIC. And the GIC does offer the opportunity for municipalities to join them. When the health insurance laws were changed by the legislature 2011, maybe 2012, somewhere around there, communities had the opportunity, if they followed certain steps, to force employees into the GIC. What Brockton elected to do at the time was to maintain its self-funded insurance program through and then operate through what's called a PEC, or a Public Employee Committee. And so that Public Employee Committee negotiated an agreement with the city that agreed to what's called plan design, and that's the specific benefits, health benefits that are offered in the program and what the co-pays are. And so that's an agreement between all of the unions, including the teachers union and the city, and it's a binding agreement. That agreement has been renewed several times over the last several years, and I've been involved with 2 of those renewals. During one of those renewals, that specific topic of going to the GIC was discussed. Mayor Sullivan determined, and I believe correctly so, we have a health insurance plan, I think, that has good, solid health insurance benefits at reasonable costs. I think when some of the plans that are offered by the GIC have lower premium costs. So the actual, had Brockton gone to the GIC, the actual budgeted amount for health insurance would have likely been lower. But that comes from the design of those plans has much higher deductible costs for the employees. So to me, it didn't or wouldn't represent a cost savings. It would really represent a cost shifting, meaning the employees would really pick up a much greater share of those costs. And because we traditionally have offered good, solid health benefits, and it's been part of how we attract employees, the decision was made to renew that. And so we just, in his last year, Mayor Sullivan renewed that PEC agreement for 4 years. And so in 3 years hence, we'll have the opportunity really to make that decision again as to whether or not the GIC makes sense. And let me be clear what I'm about to say. I don't mean this to be alarmist, but we've talked about it in 2023, and should we get to a point where the city is unable to meet its obligations and the state comes in and takes some control over the city's finances, that negates the PEC agreement, and at that time, I think the employees would be forced into the GIC. So it makes it all the more important for these discussions that we're having about those overall financial obligations to ensure that we remain solvent.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Councilor Charnel?
I just have a question on the auditor position from the school side. Where are we with that? Because I know that's been vacant, and because school's going to start back up, and you know, I think that was, like you said, a very impactful position in your department. So, have you seen any applications for that? And
So in terms of that, we posted the position, I believe it was in late June. It closed a couple days ago. Myself and my assistant city auditor are looking at applications. We have a decent amount of applications, very good applications. We're gonna start interviews relatively soon, and hopefully we will have that person in the office by the beginning of September. That's really my goal, because in September when school starts, and that's really when everything picks up in that activity, and I really need that oversight in the school department at that time.
Okay, anyone else? If not, we'll go on to warrant review. Councilor Nicastro, do you want to start it off?
Sure.
Councilor Nicastro, forgive me, but before you start, I saw the review page, which the auditor provided to us, and I guess for all of the different warrants, 121, 124, 126, 127, 128, he sent us 1,721 line items to look at, 605 different vendors, and I guess in the aggregate, a $10,897,440 payment. Is that correct? Am I looking at the right page?
Yes.
So if people wonder what we do in our free time, thanks to the auditor, we look at 1,721 line items. Go ahead, Councilor Nicastro.
Thank you. I'm looking at warrant 26-121. And the pages are not numbered, but the back side of the first page. The first line item is BBB Corp/remit. Down almost to the end of it, there's payments to Brockton Food Service Department. And the question that I had is, I understood that our food service was provided by Chartwells. And so there are on other warrants, there are payments to Brockton Food Service Department. Did Chartwells change their name, and you might not be able to answer this right now, but I'm very interested to know.
I'll definitely find out for you. I'll make a note of it.
Oh, you're welcome.
And then on the third page, I don't know, about halfway down, there's payment to City of Brockton tax collector, $5,021.44. And the reason is Brockton High School graduation. I don't understand why we'd be paying the tax collector for something related to the high school graduation.
Do you have the PO number?
Yes. It is. I think it's 142-220-01. I think.
What's the PO number again? I'm sorry.
Pardon?
What was the PO?
Oh, purchase order's over to the right. That was the wrong number. Forgive me.
Yep.
It's 300-60802.
60802. This is for police detail. Can you guys see this on here or no?
No. Let me just see you.
Okay.
There we go.
Yes, I paid the tax office for police detailing.
So we paid the tax office for detailing? Didn't we have been paying the police department?
Nope, they made it payable to the
Collector of
to the
tax?
collector. Yeah.
Why would that be?
I'm actually not sure. Let me write this down as an outstanding item.
Councilor Castro, I missed the original question. I see the hours for Edison graduation, and it includes the school police supervisor and Mark Picaro, as well as apparently,
The payment was made to the tax collector, not to the police department.
I think we're back charging the schools. I may be wrong, but I think we're back charging the schools for the Brockton police officers who had to be present. So in other words, instead of it being a private detail, it became a paid detail from the school department. And we have others that might be the sewer division or the water division or something like that. I think that's maybe what it is, but the auditor will probably know better.
Well, I understand it's a bill of the school department, but why wouldn't it have been paid to the police department?
I don't believe they have a retained revenue account. You'd have to pay it into the general fund. So their salaries are already covered by the police department appropriation. And this was additional duties above and beyond their regular duties. So it's like instead of billing, let's say, a construction company for 4 officers out on the road, we're actually billing the school department for 4 officers at the graduation.
Does that sound right?
Yes, yes, it does.
Okay. All right, I understand, thank you. Okay, so now, on the next page, there are a lot of payments to something called EIUS-LLC. And it's just listed as services. Do you want a PO number?
Yes, please. This is 2026.
Yes, I'm still in the same warrant, P
Okay.
26-121. And so the first PO order is 380-60832.
It's a lot of money.
This is for special ed. Let me see. This PO says home and hospital tutoring.
They only list for a reason, services.
Yeah, this is one of the things as well that I should have mentioned in my presentation. We need to get departments in general to put in the appropriate. I know that Munis limits the amount of characters you can put in for the invoice. I'm not sure. I guess that's a question for the chief information officer, if we can actually increase that, because I would like to see more detail on that as well. Because if anyone who doesn't deal with this stuff just sees that and says services, well, a service could be anything, right? So this is something that I'm working on for this fiscal year to make sure that when you guys receive those reports, it doesn't just say services on the comments on the general ledger. It actually says what the service is. In this case, it would be, hospital tutoring.
Well, I know that you have been working on this, and a lot of these entries for detail were better than they used to be.
Right.
So I don't mean to interrupt, but point of information, years ago in the Accounts Committee, we worked with, I think it was Mel at the time, who was auditor, and with the IT department, and they did expand that field. So I think maybe the issue isn't just expanding, but making these departments actually fill in, because there are other input, where they've put in more detailed. That one just chose to say services, but I think they had enough space to put in, hospital tutoring or whatever else they wanted to, because we did expand that field years ago when we came across this problem. But I think the employees or whoever's inputting the department heads to be stricter with whoever's inputting the information. Sorry, Counselor, but.
No, that you added value. Now, I understand there's a great number of bills here, and they were trying to get it in for the fiscal year end. I understand that, but we just need more information.
Yeah.
On the same page, are you ready to move to the next one? On the same page, down a few, there was payment made to the Environmental Protection Department, $31,372 and change. And the reason is listed as DEP annual fee. May I give you the purchase number and purchase order number?
Yes, please.
405-60352. Oh. Thank you, Council.
It's from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. All it says here is that this is a collection letter.
A collection letter?
Yes.
Oh. It's listed as DEP annual fee. But I don't know what for.
Yeah, this is, the letter is very vague. It just shows the customer number, customer name, invoice number, notice date, due date. And it says, please be advised that your account has been deemed delinquent for failure to pay, and interest charges and/or penalties have been previously assessed, et cetera, et cetera.
Can you get some backup on that and let us know?
Yeah.
Okay,
Let me,
thank you.
PO.
Ready for the next one?
Yeah.
On the next page, a payment was made to Green Environmental, and the PO number is 385-61177. And the reason was remediation asbestos.
Can you give me the PO number again, please? I'm sorry.
No problem. 385-61177.
Yeah. Yeah.
77.
77. This is school department. This is remediation services. This invoice is for remediation services at the above referenced location during the month of March 2026. The efforts consisted of asbestos abatement hallway.
Did it say where?
No, it doesn't say where.
Can you find out?
Yes.
What department was that, Mr. Auditor?
This is facilities, I believe.
School facilities?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Ready?
Yeah.
On the back of that page, there's payment being made to Industrial Projection Services, LLC. And, well, there's 3 payments, but the third one is for quarterly air analysis calibration. It's probably the fire department, but can you look it up? The PO is 220-61574.
It is for the fire department.
Okay. Okay. All right, and then on the next page, the payee is Molly Lemur, and it just says it's for services, and the PO is 380-60866. other, she's listed on other warrants as well. But her year-to-date here is $128,370. And all it says is it's for services.
This is for, SPED, and it is the school psychologist services provided.
Okay. Thank you. And then the second last page, there's PO Box 133, I'm sorry, purchase order, not a box. I'm so used to working with post office boxes. 133-60421. The payee is Studio M Architecture and Planning, and the reason is an art district feasibility study. Can you tell me what department that came through?
That is the finance department.
Which one?
The finance department.
Okay. That's all on that warrant. Do you want to do them by warrant, or you want me to keep going? Mr. Chair.
Counselor, I have one on here I was going to ask, but.
Okay, so we'll do them by warrant.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay. I just have one, and it's under, it's 155-60523. 155-60523. It says Zoom rental. The vendor is CDW Government, and to date, for Zoom rental, presumably, we've paid $610,321.45. This happened to be for $17,000, but CDW Government Incorporated Zoom rental.
What's the
155-60523.
what's the PO number again?
155-60523.
I don't know, what page is that on? Mr.
It
Chairman?
is actually the second, third page in.
Third page, okay.
Yeah. I have one more on that page, so.
CEW, oh. I see it.
This is the IT department. There's Zoom meeting business licenses that the IT department had purchased.
Well, we just received an email indicating we were getting away from Zoom and we were going to Google Meet. And if this is indicative of why we're getting away from Zoom, I thoroughly agree, but I don't know, well, it probably is, but, so there's no other level of detail then, right?
It just says Zoom video, Zoom meetings, business licenses, service period from March 24th, 2026 to May 15th, 2026. Then there's another one for March 24th, 26 to May 15th, 26. Then there is full-year licenses from May 16th, 26 to May 15th, 27.
Okay, let's, if you can, have someone on staff pull a little more information out on that one. And then almost down, well, a fourth of the way up from the page, custom computer. To date, 352,905.80. This purchase order is Infinite Campus Remote Support, and it's 323-60329. That's 323-60329 for Infinite Campus Remote Support, and the year-to-date is 352 grand. This payment is $10,465.
This is for the school department. Says IC CCS Remote SIS Support Services. I have no idea what that is for school verbiage.
So, just so that we'll understand here in the committee, someone on the school side would input that information into Munis, and that would generate a payment that would come to your office, but the original data entry is over on Crescent Street, is that correct?
So when they do the requisition, because you have to make a requisition before it gets turned into a purchase order. So the requisition is where it has all of as the vendor, as your department, it has the amount, it also has the description on there as well, the general description, which should say, realistically speaking, what it is. Then that then gets turned into a PO, and then we input that on our system to be paid into a warrant.
Okay, and I'm trying to figure out how to phrase this in a kind way. Let's go back to where we paid for asbestos remediation, but there was no address or anything. Let's just say we need to tighten up on that. I mean, I wouldn't pay the bill if I didn't know what address. Now, maybe something came into your office that justified that, but I guess what I'm saying is it doesn't really do us any good for us here in the Accounts Committee to catch it after the payment's been made and the check is out. So I feel in some respects I'm spinning my wheels here because we've talked about level of detail, greater accuracy in purchasing and payments of purchase orders, and I mean, to have an invoice for asbestos remediation and not even know what building, what address it is, it just seems like unacceptable. I'll just leave it at that, but thank you, I'm all done. Councilor Charnel?
I do think there needs to be, I do think there needs to be some type of standardized, if we can get to it, drop down of something, because, I mean, there's no way that you're gonna know what some of this stuff is. But I do have one question, right? So Midwest Tape, right? They have, their invoices are vast, right? So there's, I think I'm counting like almost 40. Why are they broken up into first of all, what is it? And why is it, my only question is kind of why is it broken up into so many little payments?
Give them the vendor number.
The vendor number.
The PO number.
PO number is, one of them is 610614, 2. I'm gonna need this on a computer too, because this is brutal to read.
This is the library.
Media source for libraries.
What is that?
It's got to be school department.
Everyone's going like this.
Well, no, it says something about adventures.
Is it it's probably
It says
books, right?
magical adventures, Ava's Magical Adventures. Hopefully no one on the city side is watching Ava Magical Adventures on tape.
So, my only question to something like this, and just for efficiency, is why does it have to be done like this? I mean, these are relatively small purchases. Why can't the department bulk order this stuff or be a little bit more efficient when ordering, so it's not, or is this just the way it is? Even if my order was, like, say, for $40,000, would it still be broken down as 40 different transactions?
No, so this is more of a policy decision, if you will, by us really, because we really haven't like taken a look at it. But I know that the school department, we're working with the schools in regard to Amazon and among other vendors where they buy stuff in bulk, right? Because before they would send in, they would make a purchase and they would buy a couple items. And then another day they would make another, couple purchases and stuff like that. Just buy everything in bulk. And that's what they have been doing now is buy everything in bulk. You have your invoice that comes in for an amount, and that's basically it. The library department, I don't know what they were doing in terms of the purchasing. We can't obviously control, what supplies they have and stuff like that. But if they were, for example, like did the 40 invoices or whatever that you guys are seeing in there, if they would have bought that in bulk, or if they could buy it in bulk, then why not buy it in bulk?
So my only, you're not the library department. This comes over as $68.90, and it's a very small amount. But how much time does it take to process 50 transaction versus if they would have just ordered it all and again, I'm not trying to be critical at all. I'm just trying to understand how much time you spend and now how much time we're spending even looking at it. I don't even know, like, unless you told me. I mean, I don't think it's worth looking at, but I think there's a quantifiable thing that says, listen, if we need to do a better job of not buying things single by single, or unless there's a bigger reason or a process on why there's 50 transactions for what we're probably assuming are books or something like that.
Yeah, as mentioned before, they really need to buy it in bulk. I don't know why they didn't do that. But in terms of the processing time, it takes us a bit to go in because we have to consistently look at.
And then the description is materials. Like, I don't even know what that means, what that is. I mean, that should be a little bit more descriptive so someone looking at it can, I mean, again, it's not a lot of money, but it is a lot of money because it takes a lot of time for your staff to then decipher these payments, send them out. And I think that's what I think we need to get to the roots of in the accounts department is why? Why? Like, why is that,
I could tell you why. It's just an archaic process. No one has really gone in and done a deep dive, which is why I suggested the internal audits. No one has really done a deep dive as to what's going on from a process perspective, right? So you have all of these things, right? So it seems like I'm not doing my job, right? Because all of this stuff is happening, but no one has really looked at what's going on, right? Of how, at least city side, because the school department is a different story. We've gone in and basically reshaped just the way that they do AP as a whole. We've trained them. They've done well with the Amazon stuff. They're doing well. But when it comes to, for example, the library, there's no policy in place, right? There's no policy that says, look, it takes us God knows how much time to audit all of these invoices, and you guys have the warrants that we've paid at the end of the year. It's a lot of invoices, and it's just constant. I have to pay my staff overtime now to come in and audit all of this stuff.
Process
It's
a $72 invoice.
correct. So-
Oh, yeah.
$14.
There's $11
Yeah.
and $12, I mean.
And can I just, so this is what I do understand, right? So I understand that National Grid will have a bunch of different invoices because they're tied to a bunch of different accounts.
Correct.
So I understand how that couldn't be done that way.
Yeah.
But some of this other stuff is, I mean, we're working against ourselves by processing things this way. And it is, I think what you're alluding to, that this is completely inefficient and just, you know, to pay someone even if we're paying your staff member the least amount of money, it's still a waste of, you know, it could be a waste of their time and effort and energy, where we could be doing something that's a little bit more efficient and, you know, seeing if there is a way that they can, you know, order the stuff in, you know, a more bulk fashion. And again, they may have a real reason, but they're gonna spend $28,000 with this company, and the year's not even done. So, and again, it says materials. What are they buying? If it's materials, wouldn't it? I mean, if it was a book, it would say a book, I would assume, right?
Yeah.
I'm off my soapbox, Mr.
No,
Chairman.
I agree with you.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Counselor Razak.
Thank you. And just to follow up with what Counselor Sharna was saying, if they are, you know, well, what are they buying, and if it's tapes, I don't know how they're listening to them, because I don't know anybody who still has a tape recorder, so it's just a little crazy. So that was one of my questions about them, about that company. So on page 2, it's a PO, actually 42161-000. It's Burke Dennis K. Inc.
Down at the bottom.
Yep, down at the bottom.
What's the PO number again, please?
So the first, he has a number of them, but 42161-000. It's listed as unleaded fuel, but who's Dennis Burke Inc. and,
Yeah, the fuel delivery company. I'll bet it's going to a fire station or maybe.
so it's a fuel delivery?
Yeah,
They do.
yeah.
The highway department on Oak Hill Way.
Okay. On the next page, which is page 3, almost to the bottom, PO number 44160370. So Denali Water Solutions.
Yep.
I know they have a few, I've seen them a couple of times, but who is Denali Waters? Did I miss something? Did one of the companies get bought out?
I believe this question had come up, I don't know if in our last accounts committee meeting, as to what Denali was. This is the sludge removal company.
Sludge removal, okay.
Yep.
So it's, okay. I mean, that's what it says in the description, so that's just a lot of money, $3,429,000. All right, the following page, next one is, also in the capital, that's that one. Next is on page, what I have is page page 6, almost to the bottom. It's Latham Centers, Inc. PO number 36560601. It says special ed, but it's $391,574. I mean, that's way more than what a student costs. I'd like to know how many students that's covering. The rate is 1,014 for what?
A
Per
day?
day?
A day?
I believe it, yep.
That's how many students? I wonder. And where is this Latham Centers? In Brewster? Oh, no, Brewster.
Brewster?
Yarmouthport?
I'll bet that's a residential,
Yeah,
Residential? I'm not sure, but that's just, I'd like to know how many students this is covering, because the total to date is 391,574.
Let me write that down.
Probably just one student. If that's the case, then we should close our schools and just open special ed.
Well, I know that special education is extremely expensive now. I've been working more closely with the schools now that Aminata had left, and
For a year, Mr. Auditor.
Yeah.
Not even, we're only halfway through the year. 391,000. This is for one student? This is pretty scary.
must have serious needs.
Yes, but I mean, in that case, I don't know, like, there has to be other solutions. And I bet you a huge part of that is transportation also. The next is on,
can I add something real quick to that? So, 'cause this just popped in my mind. I know that at least for transportation, we used to have issues with their invoices, right? So, what Aminata had done in conjunction with the schools is she basically made a template of how to calculate like the rates and everything. So, and they would give it to the vendors instead of the vendors having their own invoices that don't have the level of detail that we would require. I kind of want to do that with stuff like this, right? Where we would ask the vendor, can you please provide more details on the invoices? Because clearly some stuff isn't enough. I'll give you another example is the Clifton Larson Allen stuff, right? Our external auditors. When we get billed, right? Obviously we have to pay them because we know what they're performing. But on the invoice, all it says is for audit services on X day. That's all it really says. There's no granular detail that you guys would like to see as to what it is. So that's kind of something in the back of my mind where I'm like, if we can do it with the transportation vendors, why can't we do that with the other vendors as well? Ask them for, a higher level of detail on their invoices so we know what's going on.
okay, so yeah, I think that's important to know, because that's just a lot of money. The next, it's on the next page, it's WB Mason, and it's a bunch of small invoices, kind of similar to what we just saw with the other company, tape company, but, I mean, we're close to $2,248,489 year-to-date to WB Mason. That's a lot of money for paper and office supplies. I mean, are we buying equipment from them? Because we're also buying equipment from other companies too that offer the same services. I just feel like it's a lot.
It says English language arts, instructional supplies and materials.
Yeah, Prism ELA instructions, WB Mason offers instructional, like school instruction.
yeah.
What's going on?
For example, one of them is office chairs, COVID grant. So if that was a COVID grant for 2,654, why would we be paying? Does that mean we got the money in for the grant and we're paying W.E. Mason? I didn't know we had a grant for chairs.
Do you have a purchase order number?
Yeah, well, let's do this one with the chairs. So it's 51260185. But it says it's office chairs for $2,654.
Oh, 2016, what am I doing? What's the PO number again? I'm sorry.
It's
Yep.
51260185.
So this is one of their grants that they had before.
Board of Health?
4 chairs, 7 chairs, 11 chairs.
$241 a chair.
About that.
I'm wondering what happened to the chairs that were there before.
Board of Health, yeah.
So that's just, I think that's a lot of money for supplies and goods, but what we do. Anyway, next one, let's see, you already asked about the libraries. On page 9, the National Grid. So they have a bunch of different invoices, and as Council Charnel said, you know, it's understandable, they cover a lot of buildings. But there are ones that, like, some of the invoices are well labeled, like it'll say School Street, there's actually looks like there's 2 accounts for School Street. There's, Oak Hill Way, Pearl Street, so I'm figuring, are these poles, are they, because it's only $41 for Pearl Street, and I don't know what we have on, maybe the museum, I'm not sure, like, how do we know who these addresses are to that they go to, like North Cary, National Grid, what city office is on North Cary Street? Also Oak
Could be
Street.
cameras,
I'm sorry?
the cameras, powering of the cameras.
So that's what I'm wondering, are they some like that, or poles, or who knows? Cameras, okay. So that's for National Grid, then I think the last one is the last page. It's the one to Wildlands Trust, PO 805-76002, and it says unknown community days. And I'm just wondering, because I know Wildlands Trust is, I didn't think we paid them for anything, because they came in, it's all grant funded. So I'm just wondering what we paid them $1,474 for.
What's invoice? I'm sorry.
805-76002. Wildlands Trust. And they've done a lot of great work in the community, but I know, I was under the understanding it was all grant funded. Whose hourly rate is $150? Interesting. Yeah, this is interesting, because I was under the understanding that this was all, everything they did was grant, that they came in with their own, grant, so. Can I get a copy of that, or?
Of this? Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. That's all I have on this one, Mr. Chairman.
All right. While we're on that National Grid page, could we take a look, Mr. Auditor, at 380-60842, 380-60842? It's right at the bottom of the page. New Direction Solutions, LLC, 195 grand to date, and the only thing listed is services. And I can give you those numbers again if you need them.
What's the PO number? I'm sorry.
PO number is hand me. 380-60842, 380-60842.
Special education services for schools.
Let's see, ProCare therapy. What's it for? Oh, it's, okay, it must be special ed.
Yes.
Yep. Thank you, Mr. Auditor. Counselor Charnel, you have one?
Yeah, I just have a quick question. So, when Counselor Farwell just brought up the new direction solutions, and it just says services, right? Can you tell who's putting in these POs? Like, the person in Munis's name's attached to it?
Yes, we can figure out from the requisitions who imported what from the back end system.
Gotcha. Because, I mean, something needs to be done with the inputters, where I don't know if we have to call a meeting, I don't know if we have to have some SOPs, but, I mean, I agree with a lot of what's being said here. I don't, like, how do you know? And again, I know you're trying to process and get these people paid because they've done the work, and I'm one to say, hey, let's pay our vendors. But you can't then have a meeting and us not know what vendors are getting paid or what the service is, or we have to look it up, because I mean, it's, it's time consuming, and it's just, it should be a little bit more descriptive so we could just move on to, bigger ticket items and stuff that actually, moves balance sheets, in my opinion. Sorry.
I think, Counselor Chanel, I think it would be very helpful if, at our next meeting, and I'm going to try to pin all of you down for a potential date in about a month or 3 weeks, to have Kim Tsai come over and/or someone else with her to let her hear firsthand what we're trying to do, why we're trying to do this, to clarify, to expand on the description of services. If they had added 4 letters, SPED, S-P-E-D, services to that line, we would have probably all understood what it was about. I mean, there are some very simple solutions here that I think will reduce time considerably. Shall we go on? Councilor DeCastro, you had some more, I think?
Yes, I do.
Just a quick thing, real
Yes.
quick. What time does the parking garage close? Because I still have my car there. I need to get it out.
I believe 9 o'clock, but you should probably,
Yeah, we should try to wind this up in the next 5 minutes or so.
we don't want you to get locked out without your car.
Because it depends, we
find
can go to a
out
quick
for you.
recess, or if it's up to you
There's
guys.
a couch right outside the council chamber, by the way.
No.
I'm
we
just
wouldn't do
being
that,
funny.
no.
Being fresh. Okay, on warrant P26-126.
Is it still the same one or the
No,
next
this is a
one?
different one.
Okay, 126.
P26-126. 1, 2, 3, 4 pages in. The PO is 121-60129. And it's paid to a funeral home.
Oh, look at the, it says Fred Fontaine.
Fred Fontaine,
Yeah, isn't that what that says? Fontaine.
he paid something. Can we go up a little bit? So the person died in January. And we paid to bury them.
What page is this on, Sue?
What?
Which one is it? What page?
It's
This one?
4 pages in,
Okay.
on this warrant.
Can you scroll up a little bit on this one, Mr. Auditor? Actually, yeah, down bottom of the page, I'm just trying to,
I'm sorry.
let me see who signed this. All right. Funeral home. It looks like it was partially paid by Medicaid. Councilor Nicastro, if you don't mind, I don't think the auditor realizes, we went through a period of time years ago where some funerals were paid for, and I'm sure there are only certain exceptions that are allowed, and it bothers me to see this. It's like we're returning to our roots of having to watch where amounts are being expended. Now, this indicates that was an upgraded blue metal casket, and I don't even know who the person is who died. I don't even know where they lived. But I I just want to say this to you and to my colleagues. The only way you earn the trust of people is to make sure that whatever payments we make are in absolute conformity with laws and regulations and the practices of sound financial management by the city. So I'd like to have all of the documentation that's in your file for this particular charge to review at our next meeting. Whatever it is, if there's letters, if there's some correspondence from the funeral home, because, you know, to have the city residents pay $3,650, and I assume it came out of the general fund, am I right?
Yes.
It was a general fund payment?
Yes.
You know, unless there is a legitimate legal reason why we had to do this, folks, we've got to watch these things.
Can we scroll up again to the, what date was this?
Date of death, January 21st, 2026. I missed the date that this was processed.
It says Wednesday, February 11th.
Was the service.
Oh, wow, almost, okay.
It has the person's name at the top, right?
Yeah.
And the city also buried him in addition to paying the funeral bill.
At Melrose, yeah.
So he actually put out more than the 3,600.
Wow, interesting. The funeral, multicultural on
Court Street.
Court Street. Yes, so, George Fisk's place.
You said it came from the general fund. What budget paid for that, Mr. Auditor?
This is from the mayor's line item.
Office?
Yep.
Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to interrupt, but the garage does close at 9 and it's 10 minutes out.
Yes, yes.
The-
Can we, because I don't want the auditor trapped here in the garage, or without access to the garage, would you all check your schedules and see if August, very quickly, let's see if I can get into my phone here. While the auditor is here. Thursday, August 27th. Anyone have a conflict, Mr. Auditor?
I'm good with that date.
No. Good for you, August 27th?
I mean, as of right now, I think so. I have to look at my calendar, but I should be
Okay.
there.
So tentatively, we'll schedule another meeting on August 27th. If there is no further business, could we have a motion to adjourn and thank the auditor for his work?
Second.
All right, motion to adjourn. All in favor? All opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.